Hello and welcome to the Full On Football podcast. Tonight I'm joined by a special guest from across the pond, Eric Franck. To be frank with you, Eric, thanks for coming on the
Oh,
podcast.
you can check that one off.
Yeah, exactly, mate. Exactly. I've been up all
No,
morning
no
preparing
worries.
that.
Of
um,
course.
Wanted to talk this time about the World Cup coming up. If you guys haven't heard of Eric already, which I'm sure you have, 150K on TikTok, do go and check out his channel because his football knowledge is encyclopedic. It's encyclopedic? Yeah,
Jeez,
encyclopedic.
you sound like Jack Grealish. You don't know
Yeah,
what the word
I'm trying to.
encyclopedia means.
Yeah, I do know what it means. Exactly what you are, your football knowledge. And just before we started, I just threw one off him off the bat, Freddie Lundberg and Robbie Keane. And the link between those two is
Jermaine Pennant.
he had it off the bat
Keane at
straight away.
Liverpool, Youngberg at Arsenal.
Makes perfect sense. So getting straight into it, Eric. Obviously, being a Canadian yourself, Canada have qualified. Is it for their second World Cup?
Second time ever. Previous one was in Mexico, 86.
How do you feel about Canada's World Cup campaign coming?
It is very worrying. I'm not gonna lie. Croatia and Belgium, even Morocco, they've got players in there. It is a little worrying, but we have a very unified squad. We've beaten some good teams in qualification. We beat the USA and Mexico, and we drew both of them in the reverse fixtures. So there is a bit of hope in there, but it's these two teams, Belgium and Croatia, are going to be a completely different test.
Is this the best side you'd say you've had in years,
Oh, ever
Canada?
by a mile.
Yeah.
Even in the 86 team, I think we only got there because other CONCACAF teams were worse. Every player there played like domestically. The fact we actually have a treble winner, someone who won League as like one of the best players for Lille, Kyle Larin, who scored like 20 plus goals in the Turkish league. We've never had pretty much anything like that.
So for the people listening at home, do you mind just running through some of the players? So obviously I know Alfonso Davis, Jonathan David. What sort of players are we looking at in the
Those
Canada
are the main
team?
guys.
Yeah,
We have Stefan Eustachio in midfield. He's just scored for Porto in the Champions League. I think in their previous two games in the Champions League, which is good. He is someone who played his youth football for like the Portuguese youth national teams and then couldn't really break it to the senior team. So he played for Canada because he was born in Ontario. And he got a move to Porto from a lower club in Portugal, pretty much based off his Canadian national team performances. And now he's established himself as a starter for Porto, and he's very good. But he's going to be playing against Modric, Kovacic, De Bruyne, and Tielemans. So that is going to be quite the test.
it'd be tough for anyone though in that group. I mean, that is
It
a
would.
it's two good teams, Croatia and Belgium. So
Those
it's
are probably the two best midfielders in the world, De Bruyne and Modric.
that'd be the
We have to
two that
face them.
if you pushed me, those two would be the top two. Even at
Yeah.
37, by the way, Luka Modric is still unbelievable, isn't he?
No, I know. I'm very worried. He could end our hopes and dreams with one Trivella pass. I can already see it.
So what's changed with Canadian football? Why is it in the state it's in right now? Why are things improving in Canada? Do you think you're going to have better teams in years to come?
I think we will. It's growing up, the youth systems and stuff are pretty good. It's just the interest I think is kind of lacked because people here prefer other sports like hockey and basketball and stuff. But I think we kind of just got blessed with a few very talented players. We've always had players who play for kind of small European clubs and such, but now we actually have a very good core and we have some stars, which is what is needed.
With Alfonso Davis is probably the one that stands out to everyone. What he's done at Bayern Munich.
Definitely.
How so? Just talking left backs worldwide, how do you think he compares? Do you think he is the best left back in the world? One off top three, top five?
I think he is because I think he's the most effective. I don't think there's anyone else who can get past players like he does. He's literally it's in the build of like a Dama Traore. Like he can put the ball around one side, run the other.
There,
I think like Robertson's probably better at crossing from deep and stuff, but defensively he can catch up to anyone and going forward he just zooms past people.
I always feel, I don't know if you feel the same as me, with pacey players, there's like levels to it. There are players that are quick, but then there are players that are just when they run. Like I think Traore's one, and Mbappe's another, Alfonso Davis, Kyle Walker, even maybe to a degree, when they, because they're powerful as well, you know, like
Yeah.
if they get going, there's not a lot you can do to stop it.
No, and the way he catches up to people who are in behind as well is unreal. I've in his breakthrough season at Bayern, he was doing that a ton.
His recovery runs.
But for us, he primarily plays in a front three. because you don't want to just waste his talents at left back. And he is naturally a winger. He played as a winger for
Of
Vancouver
course.
Whitecaps in like his whole life, but he just benefited from some injuries at Bayern a few years ago and just hasn't looked back at left back. So it's usually him, Jonathan David, who plays for Lille, who's one of the top scorers in France, and Kyle Larin, who's one of the top scorers in Turkey, like 2 seasons ago. He plays for Club Brugge now. Those are our front. That's our front three. Very effective. Larin and David are our two all-time top scorers, and Alphonso Davies just runs things. So those are some star names. That is as good as attack.
What's the shape that you go with at the moment? Current side
3-4-3.
3-4-3. So quite defensively
Yeah,
solid. Is that the idea? And then get the ball up to
yeah.
Alfonso. Is Alfonso Davies on the left hand side, or is he on the right cutting in
He's
and
kind of
shooting?
free
Or
roam.
free roam? Okay.
Yeah,
No, what a player! What a player! So moving on from Canada, I would argue, it's just my opinion. I'm not sure international football's as strong as it has been for a long time in terms of the fact for me, I've always felt like, so I was adamant Spain would win 2010. I could never see that not happening. It was obvious to me. I thought 2018 France, that was another one I could always see that was going to happen. This tournament this year in Qatar, I can't call it. I think there's
that's
so
true.
many teams that I'm not sure who to actually go with. Who do you think will win the tournament?
I've been saying for a while, I think Brazil are going to do it. I just think Neymar is going to be the one to be their
See,
talisman and carry them to glory.
a lot of people say that. I see it all over my socials. Brazil with the side they've got, the squad depth, etc. There's something about them I don't fancy them. But then when I think about it, no South American sides won it since 2002. There's a little bit of roulette theory, as I call it, whereby they're due a team to win it
Yeah,
at some point, if you know what I mean. So whether the climate could help the South American teams a little bit as well, that's a potential factor with it being hot in Qatar. But you think Brazil? You think Neymar's going to
I
have the
do.
tournament of his
I
life?
think I think he's going in there as one of the most informed players in the world. I think it's kind of gone under the radar because he plays with Messi and he not everyone watches Liga, but he has been seriously on it this season, and I can kind of see it. The
On
rest of
on
the squad is very solid. Yeah,
Yeah, they got a
I think
good,
Allison is one of the top three goalkeepers in the world.
if not number one. I watched Liverpool, mate. I went to Anfield a couple of weeks ago. He is a freak. He just makes one-on-ones. You back the keeper.
I know he's has that just unbeatable aura to him.
Yeah, no, he absolutely does. With Neymar, when you reflect on his career, I always find it quite a hard one to reflect on because I think in terms of talent, the two in our lifetimes, I'm sure we'll both agree, Messi and Ronaldo stand out above anything else. I think the gap from those two to third is as big as third to 30th. It's huge.
Yeah,
But Neymar, very much in terms of his talent levels, I think he very much could be in that mix. I just question his application at times.
yeah. He hasn't really shown up too much in the past like half a decade. Because since he's gone to PSG, they've only won a couple of Champions League knockout ties. So how many times has like the average fan actually watched Neymar play? And you compare it to Ronaldo at Real Madrid and Messi at Barca, so they were every year at least getting to like the semifinals. With Neymar, he was injured a bit, and PSG were really out of form in the Champions League a lot of those times. So it's just kind of passed by, it seems, the last sort of half a decade since he's left Barca.
I feel like technically, though, he's one of the players. I mean, when I think about Messi, I think that's the best technical footballer I've ever seen. Obviously, I think people talk about Messi's dribbling, his goal scoring, etc. But he's probably the best passer I've ever seen. I could name, Pirlo, Steven Gerrard, Scholes, Iniesta, Xavi. It's all different types of passes, but the weight of pass, the angle of pass, I feel like Lionel Messi's probably the best I've seen.
Yeah, I
Neymar's got
noticed that a
that.
lot more now because of how deep he plays. Messi's
Yeah,
passing is
it is a
disgusting.
joke, but even with like Neymar, I feel like his technical ability is just off the scale. He can just do things. I mean, he's skillful on the ball. We all know that, but his way to pass, the way that he strikes the ball, it's also effortless. It's also clean. So it is probably time. And if he does do that, it'll be amazing the impact that will have on his legacy when people look back on his career. Because I feel like you're talking about the average fan. The average fan does really disrespect Neymar. I think. I don't think people appreciate how good he actually is. And if he could win this tournament for Brazil, be excellent.
Oh yeah, for sure. The star player who carries Brazil to the World Cup is like just an absolute all-timer most of the time, whether it's like Pele, R9, or like Romario or Garincha, like you're just completely inducted into the Football Hall of Fame.
So, what other teams are you looking at that you're thinking might challenge Brazil this year?
I think France, obviously with Mbappe and Benzema and Kunku. Like, and Kunku, I'm sure goes under the radar a bit because he plays for Leipzig, but he's top scorer in the Bundesliga. Last season, he had a ridiculous amount of goals and assists. Him and those two, that is going to be really hard to stop. I think they'll absolutely walk their group. Then it remains to be seen how they'll do apart from that. I think Argentina as well will be quite strong. Messi. I think Lautaro Martinez is going to have a good tournament as the focal point.
I mean, form has a lot to say with it, doesn't it? And he's feeling very confident at Man United since he signed. He's been very good, made a big impact there. On France, the question I put to you on France, I mean, I think they've probably got one of, if not the best squad in the world when everyone's fit. I just think in midfield. Firstly, the roulette theory thing I was saying about. It's not very often that a team wins tournaments back to back. I know that, if you flip a coin heads or tails, it's still 50-50 next time, but you feel like that a little bit because they won the last one. But also the midfield, Kante being injured, Pogba's injured, Matuidi's retired. That's a completely different midfield to what they
Yeah.
had last time. Benzema back in the frame. That changes the dynamic of the team. I personally don't fancy France, even though they've probably got the best squad when everyone's fit.
Yeah, I do think they'll go far. Their midfield options aren't bad, like Chouameni, Camavinga,
Oh, Camavinga
got
is
some others
brilliant.
in there.
He's
Like,
brilliant.
they're probably the most privileged team to have their two starting central midfielders get injured.
Yeah,
So I think they will do well. That group with Tunisia, Australia, and Denmark, they should be topping. And I believe they would play, if they top it and things go to plan, they'd play either Mexico or Poland, probably from Argentina's group in the round of 16, unless they somehow get Argentina, which would be another classic encounter like last tournament. Then that's quarterfinals. Then anything can happen from there.
anything can
I just
happen.
think with those forwards, complete like give them one chance and they'll score it. Three of the best.
Yeah, 100%. And with the World Cup, I always find it strange. You probably only have to beat two or three big sides to win it. It's only 7 games long. If you have 3 games in a group, round of 16 and a quarterfinal, you could only have to play three good teams to win the whole thing. So there is that as well, like you're saying with France's draw. With Argentina, finally, so you can only really see one of these 3 sides winning it, right? Brazil, Argentina,
Yeah,
France.
I have just that feeling about Argentina with Messi's last tournament and the rest of their teams seem to be clicking. They went on a really good,
Is it
like
37?
undefeated run. I think so.
Yeah.
And they won uh that one-off game tournament against Italy. They completely dominated them.
Finalissima, they call it or something,
That's the
isn't it?
one, yeah.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
obviously won the Copa America.
Yeah.
I don't know if Di Maria is going to be fit though, which is quite a big loss because he hasn't played recently for Juventus. But if he's in there and Messi's in there, Lautaro Martinez is firing, Lissandro Martinez is clapping up at the back. Who could put it beyond them?
No, definitely. That's the side that I'm looking at. I'm thinking might win it. As much as I say about Brazil, I don't feel like this Brazil now would have won tournaments in the past. But when I first said at the start, just my opinion, that I feel like it's a bit more open this time around. There is no standout obvious one. And that is what puts, for me, Brazil or Argentina in the mix. I think they've got every chance, to be honest with you. Eric, I want to test your football brain, get onto a quiz. I know that you're brilliant at trivia. I've prepared a little 5 questions
Let's
for
do it,
you.
baby.
You fancy it?
I do.
Good man. All on the World Cup. So here we go. Who is the third all-time top goal scorer in World Cup history?
Gerd Muller.
Spot on. Spot on. I thought the first two would be too easy, so I didn't want to ask that
I just
one.
had to go through who broke whose record, and then like, okay, that's the one.
No, you're spot on. How many teams have won the World Cup?
6,
Oh, Eric, you're better than that. Do you want to have a second chance?
7,
No, it's 8, mate. It's 8. I can't give you a third.
8.
Yeah, it's 8.
Oh,
Obviously, England and Spain won it once. You've got France won it a couple of times. Italy 4, is it? Germany 4, Brazil 5. Who am I missing?
just doing off the
Uruguay,
top of the head. I didn't
Argentina
want to count
2.
on my fingers because
No,
that was
hey,
pin pot.
just get it in there. Get it in there. The only 2 teams to win it twice in a row are
Brazil in 58 and 62, and Italy in 34 and 38.
spot on, spot on. Most World Cup appearances by a player.
Lothar Matthäus,
Do you know how many appearances?
25.
Oh, you're good.
He's
You're
good.
good. And the goalkeeper with the most clean sheets. There's 2 answers, either one.
Ooh, I've never really thought of that. Who would have played a lot? Does Neuer? He must have a lot of clean sheets.
He's not the answer.
No? All right. Give me one more just to get one of the two. Um, who played a lot? Carbajal, the Mexican keeper from back then.
Peter Shilton, Fabian Barthez.
Oh, there you go.
Good effort though. Peter Shilton played a lot of times for England. I think he's England's
Oh, I
all-time
know. He must have had
top
four
caps.
tournaments.
So yeah,
Yeah.
exactly that, exactly that. On to the back to the World Cup this time round in Qatar. Thinking about the dark horse, is there an obvious team to you that stands out you think is going to punch above their weight? Not necessarily win the tournament, but just surprise everyone with their progress.
I'm really hoping it's these guys.
Well, of course. And look, you've got a tough group, as you said before, and I think getting out the group alone would make you if you do that, I feel like you've already done it, if you know what I
Oh,
mean.
that would be if we just need to get a draw in one of those first two games, then hopefully take Morocco and hope the other results go our way. But that sounds really biased. I'll say Serbia. Serbia have
Serbia.
a very good squad. Tadic, they've got Mitrovic and Vlahovic up top.
Have you
The rest
seen
of the squad are very
Mitrovic's
well
international
balanced.
record, by the way?
Oh, it's obscene. He
You've
literally has his own Wikipedia page called List of International Goals Scored by Alexander Mitrovic. They only do that for a very select few people.
Do you know Wayne Rooney scored 53 goals for England, and he's England's all-time goal scorer internationally. Broke Bobby Charlton's on 49. Mitrovic has got more than Wayne Rooney
That's
internationally.
mad.
Yeah,
And they'd be against similar teams because they're in
they'll be
Europe.
very much against similar teams. That's the argument. You can't just say they're playing weaker teams. Wayne Rooney scored a lot of his against the likes of Andorra and all of those. So
Yeah.
you can't
He
use
broke
that.
his record against San Marino.
San Marino again, yeah, that's, he probably scored two or whatever in the game. He regularly scored goals against teams like that.
But no, Mitrovic seriously goes off for them. He was only in one tournament, which was the previous one. He got a goal in there, but I just think they're a very well balanced team. They finished top of their group in qualifying ahead of Portugal and went automatically to the tournament. And I think they'll get out of that group. They're with Brazil, Switzerland, and Cameroon. Switzerland were pretty impressive in the Euros, but I think Serbia are going to do them
Do you
and
think so?
could go on a little bit of a run. Yeah, that's just what I assume. Although Granit Xhaka is in very good form.
His form for Arsenal's really shocked me because that's somebody I'm really critical of is Granit Xhaka, but he's been
I can't
really good
believe
this
it.
season.
I couldn't believe it. Just he just scores all the time. I think he's got 4 or 5 goals in all comps. Like, where did this come from? But I'm not complaining.
Do you know by chance? I'm going to ask you this. I haven't actually done my research on this one. Hungary, are they playing in the World Cup? I'd imagine
No,
they missed out, did they?
and they've been really good in their Nations League group. They beat
Yeah.
Germany. They smashed England 4-0.
Well, this is the thing. I watched those England games, and I don't think it was a case of just England. They actually looked like a really good side.
Oh, I know that one they won 4-0 at Wolves ground was every like shot was just perfect.
But
The
do you know
XG must have been so low, but they were just burying everything.
sometimes though a team can beat you. What I went to Bristol City last night against Sheffield United. Sheffield United beat Bristol City 1-0, but it didn't deserve it against the run of play and all of those things. I watched Hungary, and what stuck out to me on both games is they're not just. I think they're actually a good side here. I think it's not just that they're just playing well tonight. They actually looked like they were a decent
Oh,
side.
same with the Euros. They only
100%. They had
lost
a
to
good
Portugal in the
Euros.
last 10 minutes and they drew France and Germany. And that Germany game, they really should have won. They were all over them.
No, absolutely, and that's why I was gonna say if I'd have picked one, that's who I'd have gone with. But I didn't realize they hadn't qualified. Who knocked them out in the qualifying? Who's another?
I'm not sure. They just must have not clicked for them.
I should have
Oh, they
prepared that.
probably got to a playoff or something. I can't
Yeah,
imagine them not even getting to the playoffs.
no, definitely can't imagine it. So with this World Cup coming up, obviously, like we've said before, I think you've answered the question to this one earlier, but I'll ask you anyway. Talk me through what's going through your head when we're talking about player of the tournament. Who's going to be the best player at this tournament?
I think Neymar's going to light it up.
And obviously, with Neymar doing that and Brazil winning it, he will be the man. Who else are you thinking in proximity? You thinking Messi?
Oh, yeah. I think fairly obviously, I think Messi's going to do well, but I think Kevin De Bruyne will definitely be in for a shout. He every game now just seems to be getting goals and assists, and unfortunately, Canada have the due task of keeping him quiet in that game. I don't think we will, but if we do, that'd be sick. I still think he's going to absolutely tear it up, goals and assists. Although Lukaku is a bit of a doubt right now, so I don't know who he'll be feeding. Openda? He's a young Belgian striker. I think that's their backup guy. Regardless, I think Kevin's gonna light up Qatar.
That's an interesting one with Belgium you're touching on there because obviously this is their so-called golden generation, been going for about 10 years. Very much like England's golden generation, all the players, but not even really got close, have they? This
No,
is pretty much, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd imagine this is a last
certainly,
tournament for these lot.
I think so. Maybe you can squeeze one more out of Lukaku, Hazard, and De Bruyne, but even Hazard has fallen off. He's not the same player he was in the previous World Cup.
No, of course.
Defenders are getting on in age. It gives me confidence to say that their defenders are super old, considering
Here we
Canada
go.
play them
Suddenly,
in the first game.
suddenly Canada are going to get through the group and everything's going to look
Oh
rosy
my
in,
god!
in
If
around
Alfonso
the.
Davies is running up against Vertonghen or Alderweireld, who are in their mid 30s, I'm confident.
I'm fancying it. You're talking me into this. I think Canada could do them. I
This is what
really,
I've been
really do.
convincing myself for the last half a year.
So on Kevin De Bruyne, how highly do you rate him in comparison to other players? You know, you talked about Modric and De Bruyne being the best two midfielders in the world. Firstly, would you put him as first out of the two? And
Yeah,
secondly,
I
how
would. I think he's the most effective, and he's just so it takes so much authority in those games. They're like silky midfielders, like I think like Mesut Ozil was quite silky, or like Phil
very
Foden or something. But De Bruyne is just authoritative. He's someone who just takes no prisoners, hard passes, rockets shots, and it's super effective. He's a big guy. I think
where does he
gonna be
rank?
the one to watch
Not just
all time.
midfielders. No, no, I'll come
What
on
are you
to
gonna
that,
say?
but just midfielder, not just players right now. So we're talking if you said the best player in the world right now is, where does he rank in amongst that? Is he second, third,
Oh, he's probably in the top three.
top
That's
three for
quite the
me?
conversation to have.
Top
But I
three
think
for
he
me,
can
yeah.
certainly establish himself in the top three.
Yeah, that's where I'd have him in the top three. I think in terms of all time, do you know what, mate? I don't want to get too carried away on it. I don't want to come out with rash statements and things like that. But I do think for what we've seen for about 5 years here, when we're talking about Pirlo, Zidane, Gerrard, and all of these, I think De Bruyne is in the
Oh,
bracket, to be honest with
certainly.
you. I really
Certainly. The
do.
amount of bangers he scores and big games he turns up in.
And like you said, I think for me anyway, it's the effective thing. Like he's not just Ozil was very pretty on the ball. He's got all of that,
Hmm.
but he presses, he runs. He's a nightmare to play against. His passing range is as good as anybody's. Even when he doesn't play at his best, he's still effective because he can make things happen. You know.
Yeah. He recency, I think there's actually a negative recency bias. I think people look more fond on retired players, if you know what I mean, because sort of the legend aspect. It's hard to have like a
Nostalgia.
modern legend.
Yeah.
I think give it a few years once he's retired and the dust settles a bit, I think he'll be certainly mentioned as an all-timer.
How does he compare for you in terms of midfielders you've seen?
Oh, certainly one of the best of my generation that I've actually watched the games of all time. I'm sure he'll be in the discussion.
Do you know?
Bold statement.
Do you know who he reminds me of a lot? You probably heard this before, but they're not identical. There are differences, but I think there's a more similarities than differences. Gerard, that's my favorite ever player, Steven Gerrard. I see from like a physical standpoint and from a lot of their technical standpoints. I think De Bruyne is better at the wrapping his foot around it pass. I think statistically you're going to go with De Bruyne, but I think you've got to read into the context of the side that Gerard played in and things
Yeah,
like that.
and
But
big moments,
big
turning up in
moments
big
and
games. I think Jared has that.
who'd you pick out to?
Oh my, that is very tough. I'm gonna have to stick with Gerard.
Good
Just
man.
some of the bit like the last minute goal against West Ham in the cup final, Istanbul, just has that clutch factor to him.
He is absolutely unbelievable. Best all round footballer I've ever seen. And that might be biased, but all around, the all round package, could play right back, could play up front. Absolutely fantastic footballer. So you narrow it down to one of those three are going to be player of the tournament. So moving on to top scorers. You mentioned earlier Mbappe, Benzema. That would probably lean towards that. Maybe Neymar. Who are you thinking of a top scorer this time round?
I've said a few times, I think it's going to be Lautaro Martinez. I think he could have a nice little stat padding session in the opening game against Saudi Arabia because, as we saw last time, they're no good. And I think he'll get a couple in that group. Messi feeding him. He's the guy who's turned up for Argentina a lot. I think it's going to be him.
He in his new role at PSG, like playing in behind and creating more than he ever has, isn't he, Lionel Messi, and expressing that passing range. You think that's just really going to help Martinez and stat padding
certainly.
earlier on in the group.
Yeah. But I think he'll also turn up in the later stages. Like he's no mug, but I just think that Saudi Arabia game he could be in for 2 or 3 goals. Like Miroslav Klose did that against Saudi Arabia in 2002. First game he got a hat trick.
Do
Beat
you know
them
that's
8-0.
a fascinating one? You know, obviously I asked you for a top scorer, and well done for getting it right. But I thought the first two were too easy, Klose and Ronaldo. But with Klose, I'd have kids, and they'd look in the record books and see that he's all-time top guy. But then you look at his career as a whole, and I don't
Oh
think it
no.
quite matches up with the
In
world.
2009, 2010, he scored 2 goals. Then in the tournament that summer, he scored 4 goals. It just is. He just turns up in those
And it,
tournaments.
yeah, and played like majority of his career for sides like Lazio, and Lazio aren't a bad side, but they weren't ever the
No, but he
pomp
wasn't
of.
like one of Europe's most feared strikers.
No, exactly. It's a bit of
I don't
a
think you can watch any like Champions League knockout performance where he was like the man, like you can with all of our other great strikers.
yeah, no, 100%. 100%. So finally, just last bit I want to talk about, obviously me being English, me being biased. If I'll just ask you before I ask on to the next question, but if Canada do get knocked out earlier on, who are you supporting?
I'd go Germany. I'm half
Oh, I'm
German,
setting you
and
up.
there is a lot of Marco
Marco
Royce in the
Royce.
Germany kit. There's the hero of 4 years ago, Mario Götze. I've been huge into the Germany team my whole life. I'm not gonna lie, but I've seen them win the World Cup. I've had my fun with them.
Eric, I'm
Obviously, I'm going to
setting you
still
up
support
there.
them in their group. And they could actually play in the round of 16 against Canada if one finishes first and one finishes second.
But you're going with Canada if it comes to that.
Oh yeah, it has to be done.
I'm setting you up. You're supposed to say England, mate. Come
No chance.
on. So you wouldn't want England to do well.
No, I do want them to do well. There's a few Arsenal players in there I like, but I'm not crying tears if they match up against Senegal in the round of 16 and
Do you know what? On a
bite the
serious note,
dust.
if England match up against Senegal in the round of 16, I think there's an upset on the card. So I'm not even sure it should be an upset, by the way, because Senegal are a good team.
They're
But
very good. I think England would be fine. I think Senegal lack a lot of creativity. And I actually think Ecuador and Senegal are going to kind of be 50-50 in that group for second place to the Netherlands.
so to finish on your views on England, I just want to hear from you, the man himself, the football brain that you've got. How do you think England are going to fare at the tournament? Where is it going to go well? Where is it going to go wrong?
I think they'll comfortably top that group if they have the right lineup, which I think they should,
What is the right
because
lineup?
I've
What
just
shapes
never
up?
seen I've never seen so much pressure on picking the right England team. I feel like every year progressively the team gets better. Because if you look at 2014, pretty much any decent English player who played in like a top 8 club would be in the squad. Now
Correct.
there's so much competition for places. I think the right squad, Saka starting. I think Bellingham and Rice in there. I think Ben White for sure. He's been in great form. Pickford in goal. Not Maguire. I
We
know
going
that
with
he
it. You
is.
going with a back three here, are you?
I think they'll stick with that because they've done that all throughout qualifying. I know that a lot of people think they should revert to a back four, but if that's what's been successful for them, I don't think they should change it.
Well, this is the argument they have. They're going to play a back three. I think we all know that, but I don't know if they will in the group because against your likes of Iran and USA, you'd probably take it to them a little bit more. But the moment England play anybody decent in a knockout game, they're going to be playing a back three. And then there's the argument of do you play 3 games playing a back four and then change to a back three in around a six? That's a bit risky. Do you know what I mean? You probably just stick with the
Yeah.
same system all the way through. It's England's form that worries me most. I look at some of the players that are just so out of touch, so out of form, and it's just a massive concern. I'm actually really concerned. I wasn't a year ago. I thought everybody was going to mature a year and it was going to be, I don't know, it's
Yeah, it
just
can
done a
look
couple of years
well,
early.
light. It can look bad. I know Raheem Sterling hasn't had the best of times, but they're playing him wing back. So I think that needs to be allowed a bit. I think he should start because he always turns up for England, especially in the last Euros. Who else would be out of form? Yeah, some of the defenders, I'm sure it would be questionable if Maguire's in there. That he definitely shouldn't start. I know that Southgate knows that, but is he going to stick by him? Because he is England's third top scorer in the Southgate era, which is pretty interesting.
What, Sterling, Kane, Maguire?
Yeah,
Maguire from, and that, what's that, just headers from in
pretty
the
much.
tournaments? Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine anything else.
It doesn't surprise me. So where are England gonna be knocked out? Because you've not predicted them to win it. So again, and is it going to be a penalty shootout? Don't tell me it's a penalty shootout.
Oh, I can see it. Penalties in the semifinal. Just
Semi-final.
like just like 1990.
Who against?
Let me think of that bracket. Mm, France. And then we have that France-Brazil final rematch of 98. And it is an all-time classic game. Neymar against Mbappe.
Club
And
teammates.
the Brazilians take the victory.
I
That's a
hope you're
hell
wrong.
of a matchup. Oh
Yeah,
my word, just thinking about it. I hope
that
that is the
is
final.
that is hell of a matchup. And Eric, I hope you're wrong. But you heard it here first. If it does happen, Brazil are going to beat France in the final, and England are going to make the semis, which is probably better than a lot of us give them credit for. Eric, thank you for your time this evening. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed
Thank
it
you for
too.
having me on. This has been fun.
No problem at all. Take care and see you soon.